Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be explaining the second part of the IGCSE biology. This topic is called the organization of the organism. So I'm going to start by explaining 2.1. This is the cell structure. Okay, so in cell structure, in biology, the basis of everything is that we believe that every single living organism is made out of cells. And cells are the basic primary unit that makes up these complex organisms such as humans, mammals, right? Um, Even insects, right? They are all made out of cells and they form these complex organizations. And that is how basically the study of biology is. We're studying the cell structure, so we have to start from cell structure. Okay, first of all, what is a cell? So if you are asked to define this, you should be able to know that a cell is a fundamental unit that makes up living things. Living things. So it is the fundamental unit. This means that it is one of the most basics type of substance that makes up a complex living being, right? So that's the definition of a cell. And this group of cells are called a tissue. Now, a tissue is a group of cells that are working together to perform a shared function. So a group of cells which work together to perform a shared function. Right. So this is what a tissue is. A tissue is basically a group of cells which work together to perform a shared function. Okay, for example, a muscle. A muscle is a tissue made out of several millions and millions of muscle cells, individual muscle cells. These muscle cells come together. What is the main function of a muscle? Well, a muscle function is it's a tissue, right? It is made out of muscle cells. And these muscle cells individually come together, billions and billions of these cells come together to perform a shared function. And this shared function is actually contraction, because muscles' main functions are to contract and relax, and therefore allowing movement of the living being. Okay, so that's tissue for you. And another one is organ. You should be able to know all of these definitions. An organ is a group of tissues working together to perform a specific function. Now notice that in here I wrote specific instead of a shared function, because the group of tissues are not actually sharing a function. They are working together to perform a specific function. So for example, an organ, you can name an organ, let's say the heart. The heart is made up of a group of tissues. Muscle tissues is one kind of tissue, and it's made out of other types of tissue as well. And therefore, we can say that the heart is an organ. What is the main purpose of the heart? Well, it is to pump blood. It acts as a pump, to sort of pump oxygenated blood throughout the body. And that is the main function of a heart and organ. Okay, now the last and the most complex is called the organ system. An organ system is where a group of organs with related function working together to perform certain functions in the body. So a group of related functions. So these organs have related function. For example, I could give you an example of a system. Let's say a circulatory system. A circulatory system not only consists of the heart, but it also consists of the lungs, because the heart and lungs work adjoint to each other in sort of this coordination way, and where they perform this circulatory system, right? So the heart pumps the blood, but how does the heart pumps oxygenated blood? Well, it has to first exchange the blood in gas exchange, which takes place in the lungs. So these two organs are different organs, but they are related together to perform and to make up an organ system. So in summary, we could write this like this. So the cells are the most basic unit, the most fundamental units, and then come the tissues, which are a group of cells, and organs, which are a group of tissues, and organ system, which are a group of organs with related function to perform certain functions. So this is the basis of cell organization, and this is something that you have to know. Now, let's move on. We have to be able to describe and compare the structure of a plant with an animal cell. Now, I believe I did this in the previous video, but to recap, we have to be able to name at least 3 differences, right, between animal and plant cells. Now, in plant cells, we can say that plants have chloroplasts, which means they are able to make their own food, while animals do not have chloroplasts. No chloroplasts. So plant cells can photosynthesize, and animal cells cannot photosynthesize. Right? And then we also can say that plant cells have cell walls in their individual cells, while animal cells do not contain cell wall, do not have cell walls. Now this is a very important function of plant cells, because plant cells have cell walls so that they can actually retain their the cell shape and cell size, so that the cell will not burst if you place a cell inside hypertonic solution. In other words, a solution which is very concentrated. If you put a cell in a very highly concentrated solution, which means inside the cell there will be low concentration of solution, right? So the water is going to move from the low to the high, because water, remember, if there is low concentration of solution, there is high water potential there, and if there's high concentration of solute, then the water potential difference is going to be low. So the water is going to go from high to low by osmosis, so the cells would burst. Now this is for an animal cells, but in plant cells, if we try to put plant cells inside the highly concentrated solution, just like my previous example, then the cell will not actually burst. Instead, it will become something called in its turgid state. The plant cell becomes turgid, and this is described as its turgidity, right? So it becomes really bloated, almost like figure, right? It almost becomes sort of like a balloon that is being pumped out like that. So we can see that the cell wall makes the plant resistant to the change in concentration, solution, and osmosis, right? It cannot, it prevents plasmolysis in plant cells, basically. So yeah, and that's one of the differences between plant cells and animal cells, right? And another large thing is that plant cells have a large permanent vacuole, while animal cells do not have vacuoles. Now vacuoles are basically just small little sacs, right? They have no membrane. They have one single membrane, but yeah, they have a membrane. They are a single membrane, but they contain substance inside the vacuole, and those things are called sap. In plants, we call them cell sap, basically, right? And the contents in the vacuoles are actually separated from the cytoplasm. So this is a plant cell. Let me draw a plant cell with a cell wall. Now imagine this is a large central vacuole. Let's say that this is a large central vacuole. And inside the vacuole, there are contents such as amino acids, sucrose, and many other nutrients and waste products as well in the sap. However, in the animal cells, in animal cells, there is a temporary vacuoles, and these vacuoles contain things such as water, right, nutrients, right. For example, I could give an example is like called the contractile vacuole, in which the vacuole is very temporary, right? So it forms and then it completely disintegrates. So that is, they do not have vacuoles, but they do have temporary vacuoles. You can write that as well. Okay, so these are some of the differences that you have to know between plants and animal cells. Now, secondly, we have to know that the structure of a bacterial cell. Now, I believe I explained this in the previous video as well. In bacterial cell, mostly they have a shape that looks like something like this. Now, bacterial cells, inside of them, they do have things called a circular loop of DNA. And as you can notice, they do have a cell wall, but however, unlike plants, the cell wall is not made out of cellulose. The cell wall in bacterial cells are made out of peptidoglycan. Peptidoglycan. Right, it's made of peptidoglycan, or you can call it murine. So it's made of a substance that is not sucrose. Not cellulose, basically. Now, I forgot to mention that the cell walls in plants are made out of cellulose, right? And you have to remember that as well. Okay, so bacterial cells, they do have a loop of their own DNA, right? And they do have these rings called plasmids, right? Plasmids are an extra rings of DNA. Now, they are different from the circular loop of DNA because this extra rings of DNA, right? The circular loop of DNA is basically a DNA for the DNA for the bacteria, right? And remember, the bacterial cells have no nucleus, right? They have no mitochondria. They have less developed or less organelles, right? Organelles meaning mitochondria, like chloroplast. They don't have nucleus. They don't have things like that, right? They do have cytoplasm, right? However, they also do contain ribosomes. Now, ribosomes are really tiny, so ribosomes, right? They contain ribosomes as well. So that's something that you have to remember. These factors, they have ribosomes are present, but they have less organelles and they have no real nucleus or no true nucleus. They do have something called a nucleoid, but yeah, that's not in your level right now, so I'm not gonna mention that. So yeah, focus on these four factors. No real nucleus, no mitochondria. They have a circular loop of DNA, plasmids, and have less cell organelles in present, and ribosomes are present in them. So right, you can know these. Right, another thing is that you have to know that new cells are produced by the division of existing cells. Right, existing cells. So new cells are being formed from existing cells. So this is the parent cell. This parent cell is going to divide to form a daughter cell, two new daughter cell, right? And another daughter cell. And these two new daughter cells are going to undergo division again, in which it's going to divide. And this process is actually called mitosis. And this is something that you will learn in the later chapters. But for early early for year 10s, you just have to know about these mitosis, right? Okay, so we have to also know about specialized cells. Now there are a few different there are many specialized cells. Now an example that I would first like to look at is ciliated cell. Now ciliated cells, what it means is that these cells they have long cilia on their cells, which means these cilia can actually sweep mucus away in your respiratory tract. So imagine you have mucus, right? You have mucus inside your lungs, inside your throat, and when you want to cough out, or when you free the mucus, those mucus are actually moved by these ciliated cells, billions and billions of ciliated cells that are found inside your throat, right? Throat and your if we say it in biological terms, we have to say correctly in the bronchus, along the bronchi or bronchus, right? So what is its function? Its main function is to move mucus in trachea. Trachea is also known as your voice box. I'm sorry. Trachea is also known as your windpipe. Sorry, I got mixed up with that. It moves the mucus in the trachea away from the lungs, because mucus, remember, is basically a bunch of dead skin cells, a bunch of dead bacteria and stuff. So your body actually has this mechanism in place to remove the mucus. And these very specialized cells, called ciliated cells, do their job in the bronchi. Right. A second cell that I want to look at is called the root hair cell. Now, root hair cells are very special in which that they have cytoplasmic extension of themselves. Extension in which their cytoplasm is basically extended. Right. So inside the roots, they are found in the roots, in plants. So these things would look something like this, because they have a very long cytoplasmic extension, right? This is the cell wall, this is the extension part, right? Extension. The cytoplasm is basically extended, it's being stretched almost. And why is it stretched? Well, it is stretched. If a substance is stretched, well, this means there is larger surface area. If there's larger surface area, then it means it is going to do its job and its function to absorb the nutrients absorption of nutrients in the soil. Because the plants always constantly need nutrients, and these root hair cells are going to absorb them. Okay. Number C, we are going to look at the palisade cells next. Palisade mesophyll cells. Palisade mesophyll cells are a part of the mesophyll layer. They are found in the leaf. Palisade and mesophyll, spongy mesophyll cells. They are each adapted to their own function. They are all found in the organ. Now remember, leaf is an organ, okay? So right, the palisade mesophyll main job is to photosynthesize, because if you look at them under the microscope, you can see lots and lots of chloroplasts found in them. Now spongy mesophylls also photosynthesize. Right? But however, their structure and shape is not the same, because palisade mesophyll cells are very long and elongated. While the spongy, as you might have guessed by its name, spongy meaning it looks like a sponge basically, right? It has a really circular, not regular shape, right? It's irregular shape. It has a kind of irregular shape, elongated. But the palisade cells, mesophyll cells, have elongated structures. Okay. Now, another specialized cell that you have to know is called neurons. Now, neurons are basically nerve cells. Nerve cells, they basically communicate with one another. so that you can carry out any action that you do, like talking, thinking, solving a problem, right? These neurons are responsible. Neurons are the scientific way of saying nerve cells. Now, in this level, you have to use neurons as the key term, and their main purpose is to conduct electrical signals, electrical impulses, electrical signals, impulses. And right, so this is how you will later learn about how they also transmit their electrical impulses and signals in the later chapter. So another cell that you have to know is red blood cell. Red blood cells, we also call them RBCs because so we use the first letter of the name, so it's kind of shortened into RBCs now, and doctors actually know this if they read RBCs in their blood diagnosis. They would usually see it as red blood cells, RBCs. So, what is the main function of red blood cell? Well, the red blood cell contains hemoglobin, and this hemoglobin transports oxygen. Right, it transports oxygen, and that's its main function. Now, lastly, we have to know another type of specialized cells called the sperm cell. The sperm and egg cells. Now, the main function of them is to reproduction, and they undergo another sort of cell division. It is different from the ones that I mentioned earlier, which is the mitosis. Sperm and egg cells, they undergo something, a different type of cell division called meiosis. Right. Now, this is something that you will learn in the later chapters, but for now, you can know that cell and egg cells are to reproduce, and they do have special features of them, right? They have a really special feature, which you will learn in the reproduction chapter again, but this is basically a general introduction to this. Now, okay, now that we have known all of the cells, what if we want to actually examine a cell under a microscope? Well, we have to use a formula, right? We cannot just, like randomly measure the cell as drawn in the picture for, say, in your exam. In your exam, you'll be given a cell and you'll be asked to calculate its magnification. Now, so it's really important for you to know the magnification formula. So magnification is equal to the image size over the actual size. Now, this is something that you have to know, and you have to manipulate this equation sort of to actually get your required answer. So they might they might give you the magnification, they might give you the image size, and you'll be asked to calculate the actual size. So you have to actually know how to switch the equations around. I think that's fairly easy as you are in the IGCSE level. Now, a very key thing to note about magnification is that we use millimeters as the biological unit when measuring the specimen that we are measuring under the microscope. Okay, so in this level, all you have to know is about the light microscope. There won't be an electron microscope in your syllabus. Okay, so as I was saying, millimeters, you have to know the prefixes of milli. So milli actually means 10 to the power minus 3. Now 1 millimeter is basically 1 times 10 to the power minus 3 meters. Okay, so you have to know this prefix sort of, and you have to also know the conversion factors. Now the conversion factors here is that you have to be able to convert millimeter to micrometers. Now millimeter is 10 to the power minus 3, micrometers is 10 to the power minus 6. Now micro prefix meaning 10 to the power minus 6. So there are only 1,000 apart. So to convert 1 millimeter into micrometers, you multiply by 1,000. if you want to convert micrometer to millimeter, you divide by 1,000. And this is a very important conversion factors that you have to know, because they ask these kinds of questions every single year. Yeah, so that's one part that's done. So this is everything for this video. I hope you understand every thing that I've tried to explain today. While it might be a really good idea to actually go and search up online about these specialized cells, right? Try to take a good look of how they look like under the microscope, because you will be required to actually know these cells under the microscope. They will give you a random picture and they will let you say, oh, what kind of specialized cell is this? And you'll have to name them and also know their function and features. Their features are going to be talked about more greatly in another video. But right, for this video, this is just an introduction and some kind of basics idea that you have to know. Okay, so remember the conversion factors, remember the magnification formula, remember the specialized cells and their function, right? And you have to know the differences between plant cells and animal cells. You have to know the difference between you have to know the features and differences of bacterial, plant, bacterial, animal, and you have to be able to list at least 3 differences between them. And you have to also be able to describe the cell organization and its various definitions. Now, if the question were to ask you to give an example, you would have to give an example for that. Now, it is really good to study a little bit more about that on your own. But right, this is only the introduction and kind of a revision for the organization of organism. Anyhow, thank you for watching my videos. I hope you get everything I tried to explain. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. Once again, I'll see you in the next video.